Hello and welcome to Organic Edible Garden and our kitchen. We're really excited today to have Megan May from Little Bird Organics being able to use some of our produce from our garden and our orchard and turn them into delicious dishes.
Thanks Rob, it's a real pleasure to join the team. Today I'm going to make a grilled eggplant dish with a bed of baba ganoush and then topping it with a beautiful walnut fennel seed dukkha.
And today in the garden we're going to be planting some perpetual spinach, which will take us all through winter because it's a good time at the moment to plant your leafy greens. And later on we're going to be joined by Nellie, a nutritionist and naturopath who's going to explain why fresh fruit and vegetables are so important. Let's go and pick some of those eggplants, Megan. Perpetual spinach, which is a type of silverbeet or chard, is one of the easiest winter vegetables to grow. And anybody can grow it in a container or a garden bed as long as you get your soil right. To get the soil right, you need to build up your bed with some good rich organic matter. And because these guys are green leafy vegetables, they need their nitrogen and phosphorus to grow well. If you use a fertiliser with too much potassium, it'll only encourage them to go to seed. Good examples of this type of fertiliser could be blood and bone, or sheep pellets and chicken manure, anything with a high nitrogen content. Along with the compost, I've added some well-rotted chicken manure to this bed. It's also raised it up, which is great during winter when drainage is an issue. The other thing I need to add to this bed is some lime. Any of the chard family are quite sensitive to acidic soils, so we're going to add some garden lime to this. What it's going to do, it's going to sweeten the soil and hopefully bring it up to a pH of about 6.8. Lime also adds the ever-important calcium to our bed. And finally, I'm just going to add a bit more of our volcanic rock dust with seaweed in, just to make our plants nutrient dense. We're going to lightly work our lime and our rock dust into the soil. I'm going to plant about a dozen plants in the bed this size, and this will be enough to feed us over the winter period. The reason I'm planting perpetual spinach over silverbeet in this bed is that although it's the same family, it's smaller growing and has a softer leaf. It doesn't have the oxalic acid that silverbeet has, but I can still use it in the same way. But the smaller leaves, unlike silverbeet, I can still eat raw in salads. I'm giving these guys a bit of distance between them, about 40 centimetres either way. They use a lot of energy from the soil, so this gives them more spaces for the roots to grow. Also, it gives them more air movement to prevent rusts and other fungal diseases. If you've got a small garden and can't practice crop rotation, what you can do is put newspaper around your plants and cover it with a mulch. The rust spores live in the soil and bounce up when the rain comes, but by doing this, it'll be a good preventative. If you do have rust on your leaves, take those leaves off and dispose of them, not in cold compost because it'll only transfer the spores back into the garden again. Feed them up well and they should take off. Perpetual spinach and silverbeet grow best during the winter months, but you need to be careful that they still get enough light during this growing period. If you grow them in the shade, they tend to stretch towards the light and grow weak and spindly. And don't forget about planting some flowers. The beneficial insects that have built up their population over the summer months need something to feed on over winter. So today we're just going to plant some dianthus, but there's a whole range of winter flowers you can do for this. We'll give them a bit of water to bed them in, and then we're going to cover them with nets to protect them from the birds. And we should be eating out of this bed in about 6 weeks.
I really love eggplant season. They're one of our favourite vegetables to use. They make a great main ingredient for a dish. They're just an all-round great staple to use, especially if you're eating a more plant-based diet. So one of the only things you need to do for eggplant preparation is salt them, and that's to take out some of the bitter flavour. I'm going to chop off the ends. I probably won't use the very ends. And then chop them into rounds that are about 1 centimetre thick. And I'm going to pop them in the tray here and then salt them with a generous amount of salt. You're going to wash the salt off, so don't worry if you think it's going to, be too salty. And then continue with the rest of the eggplant, and I'll just layer them up on top of each other. So I'm going to leave those there to salt for around 10 minutes. And while I'm doing it, we're going to make the next part, which is a really delicious type of dukkha. I'm going to take my pan and pop the spices in there. I've got 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds. And these whole spices are really easy to get from your organic store or an Indian store as well. We've got 2 teaspoons of coriander seeds and 1 teaspoon of fennel seeds, as well as a ½ teaspoon of black pepper. So we're just going to toast those spices for around 2 minutes until they become very fragrant. I'll do this on a medium heat. You don't want this to get too hot or it will burn the spices. Okay, so this is done. The seeds are nice and sort of golden and the smell is beautiful. So I'm going to pop these in the pestle and mortar with my walnuts and salt. So we'll chuck those in there. ½ teaspoon of good flaky salt. And then a ½ cup of walnuts. So these walnuts, you could do lightly toasted walnuts, but I do an activated walnut, which means I've soaked them and then dried them. I do this to break down the phytates on them and make them more digestible. They're also really delicious this way. So I'll take my pestle here and give these a good crush. I'm not trying to make this into a paste, I'm just really trying to give them a little crush to release some of the oils from the walnuts and give a little bit of variation and texture to the seeds. You could also do this in a food processor and give it a few little pulses. You really don't want to over blend this. And it's delicious, and I was just trying to see if I needed any more salt, but that's perfect. I'm going to pop this in a bowl and we're going to use it on top of our beautiful grilled eggplant dish. Next I'm going to cut some onion. I'm going to slice it and put it in some ice water. It just takes some of the strength of the flavour out of the onion. You could just chop it as it is, but yes, some people don't love that intense onion flavour, so this is just a nice little thing you can do. And put that aside with my eggplants there, which are coming along nicely. You should be able to see the little droplets of moisture coming out of there, and that's what the salt's doing, is drawing some of the moisture out of there, which has the bitterness in it. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is make the baba ganoush, which sits at the bottom of the plate. I have some eggplants that I've grilled in the oven. So I just left them in the oven for around 40 minutes, they're whole, and I just pierced them. And it's really important you pierce them, otherwise they can burst. And the oven was around 230 degrees, so a really hot oven. And inside you can see they're all soft and squishy. And we're gonna take the skin off and get that yummy soft flesh out to use for the baba ganoush. So it's kind of similar to like a grilled banana. It's kind of a little sticky and soft, and it's actually a little sweet as well. So baba ganoush has some garlic and lemon in there. I really like garlic, so I've got 2 cloves in here. You could just do it with 1. And we also have some cumin seed in here. Not whole cumin seed, actually some cumin powder. So I'll do a teaspoon of that in there. You could add a little more to taste of that. For this lemon, I'm going to chop it. I'm going to chop the skin off and just throw the inner part of it in whole. It's a little bit of a hard lemon, so I'm not going to get much juice out of it by squeezing by hand. And because it's going in the blender, I can just put that flesh in there and blitz it up. Then I'm going to add some tahini, which is an important part of this dish. I'm going to add 2 tablespoons there. Well, roughly. It also depends on your tahini or how much you like the flavour of tahini. So you can add that a little bit to taste as well. So I'm going to place this all in the blender, and I might add a little bit of oil in there. So when I was tasting that, it doesn't need any oil. The tahini's got lots of fat in it, so it creates that creaminess in the baba ganoush. And I'm going to be using oil on the eggplant anyway, so it just doesn't need it. It's perfect as it is. And then add a couple of pinches of salt. I'm going to put that aside now, and we're going to work with our eggplant. So as you can see, there's all this beautiful water that's come out of there. I'm going to rinse that off and then dry the eggplant. So I'm going to take this tea towel and place them on there. You could use paper towels, but a tea towel works great and it saves using paper towels. Okay, so they're nice and dry, so I can get grilling. So the pan's nice and hot. It's sort of a medium to high heat. You can see a little bit of steam coming off there. And then I'm going to place them down. Put them around the pan. Okay, I'm going to leave the eggplants in there for a couple of minutes to start browning. Now, if you had a griddle pan with the sort of lines like a grill pan, or you could actually do this on your barbecue, would be ideal. This is just what I don't have one of those, so this is the pan I use to do them, and it works just fine. You can see that they're nice and black, and what's really important here is that they're cooked through the middle, and you'll be able to feel that there. You don't want any hard bits. It's nice and soft in there, but it's still retaining its shape. So you'll notice that I haven't used any oil in the pan. You really want to grill eggplant dry, otherwise it will become mushy and sort of burnt, but it's really important that these are nicely cooked through the middle. Eggplants are done, everything else is ready. Now to dress up the plate. One thing I'm going to do actually is add a little bit of olive oil to the eggplant and just fold that through. So I'm going to pop the baba ganoush on the bottom of the plate here. So it's a generous amount there, and I'll save a little bit to the side, just really on the bottom of the plate there, and then I'm going to build it up. First of all, I'm going to pop some greens on here. I've got some Russian red kale. This is nice and soft, but kale always benefits from a little massage, so I'm just going to crush it a little bit in my hands as I'm throwing it over. And kale is one of the most nutrient-dense foods you can have, so it's a really good thing to add into your diet. Now for some herbs in here. It's a real key part to this dish, is having lots of herbs. So I've got a big handful of parsley here, which this is really nice soft parsley. If it was a bit hardier, you'd want to chop it up a bit. This is nice and soft, so I'm just going to tear it. Then I've got some mint, which is nice and fragrant. Obviously the herbs you can interchange with other ones. If you don't like mint, leave it out. Coriander would be great in here. Just any of the nice leafy, soft herbs. You could use other greens here. The kale's not essential, just any sort of leafy green. Some nice lettuce or mesclun would be great. And I'm going to take the onion that was done in the ice and just drain that. Scatter that on top there. And then pop our eggplant on. Finally, I'm going to top with a generous amount of the dukkha that we made earlier. And lastly, some of Rob's stunning micro amaranth. You can see that gorgeous colour in there. It's really vibrant, makes a beautiful garnish, it tastes great and looks beautiful. And there you have a beautiful eggplant feast for you to share with the family.
Oh, that's a really nice way to serve eggplant.
Oh, thanks. Now, that walnut dukkha that I've made goes beautifully with the nice sweetness of the eggplant.
Fantastic. So, eggplants, the main thing I love about eggplants is this beautiful purple colour. And that's due to flavonoids, which are plant phytonutrients, and that's what gives them their amazing colour. And eggplants are particularly high in one of those compounds called nasinin. The great thing about nasinin is that it helps relax blood vessels. So it promotes the circulation of blood, especially to our heart, which is really important. It also binds with cholesterol in the body and lowers the cholesterol in our body. And it also is incredibly protective for our brain cells. The most important thing about nasinin is that it actually binds with any excess iron in the body and carries it out of the body. So we all need iron. It carries oxygen around our body and provides energy. But sometimes our levels can get too high in certain situations, and that can lead to problems with things like liver disease or heart disease or inflammatory conditions like arthritis or diabetes. The other really important compounds in eggplant are plant phenols, and phenols protect the plant from any environmental stresses or bacteria and molds. And so when we eat that, we really benefit from it as well. And I think Megan talked about how when you cut into an eggplant, you should salt it to draw out the bitter compounds. Those are the phenolic acids, so when you salt it, it draws the moisture out. Then you can wipe it off, but you still get the great benefit of the phenols from the food.